technology. Do you take experience? Oh, sorry. It's just I saw there was the word minister on there. I've got the wrong note, so I marked the wrong venue. So well, welcome in. As the minister has kindly sort of mentioned, we're here to acknowledge some work that's happened over the past 12, on and off over the past 12 years, where different people have contributed by working actually out in the field. So for all the, this is looking at geomorphology, which is the landscape of Victoria, and we've got one here, John Martin, and you'll see John Martin shortly. But I think it's important that we acknowledge the work that has resulted in bad backs, dodgy knees, hernias, skin cancers, and they're still here working away. So we acknowledge them, and even the couples will spit the dummy. Well, we need that excuse for tasting the red wine anyway. And we do actually sort of look at maps, and one of the interesting things I think with this conference is that we're acknowledging work that people have done over the past 40 years or so, but there's this exciting new development where that experience can be melded with the new technologies. And you can see it's a group there looking at various new radiometrics or other new imagery. And talking of dodgy things, there's a dodgy group up on Mount Macedon. It's sort of the extended group with a couple of ring-ins from Canberra, and we'll come to some of the people there. But again, you've got the landscape of Victoria, the Western Uplands of west there. This is a terrain model which a lot of you will be familiar with, and if we're looking at Victoria, for a lot of you that might be your view of Victoria, is looking at a model like that. And how do we break that up? And these guys that have been out in the field have a way of sort of putting something theoretical like that into a practical sort of framework. So how do we divide Victoria up on those bases? And you can see various things on there, for example. And for people who sort of know Western Victoria, Northwestern Victoria, for example, you can see those sort of stripes, stranded beach lines going up Northwest Victoria. That's something that's very prominent there. So what did we come up with? With the help of a lot of help from DPI people, we've come up with a 3-tier system, which replaced a 2-tier system, and it depends, and it's very much hierarchical, scales orientated. You can see that top left there, the tier 1. We've got about 8 divisions, and if you're very good at arithmetic, you can probably only count 7 different colours. But we've got a coastal category, and the coastal category is obviously very important. We talk things about climate change and so forth. Then we go a little bit more detail in the middle. We've got about 34 divisions, and then we've got all that detail at the 3rd tier level, and then we drop down there into sort of land systems and soils. So it's very much a hierarchical approach, and this hierarchical approach is also mirrored by what's happening at the federal level, and there'll be someone talking about this at the federal level, ASRIS, later on today. So again, we've got an older shot of the group, and as you can see, various photos, and if you look very closely, you can probably count the extra grey hairs that have occurred between one set of photos and the others. And now this is going to lead us now to the presentations, and I thank the Minister for sort of being willing to do this, and we're going to have the presentations, as many of the people that we can get here, and we'll just run through those. So if I can start off acknowledging, and I'll talk a little bit about the role that each individual, because the individual has specialisations, but then the specialisations come together as a whole. So there's another sort of shot of us up in slightly later on. our first, and we'll move to our technical chairman, Associate Professor Bernie Joyce. And if I can ask Bernie to come up and take your time, Bernie. And you can see that Bernie was Professor of Geology at Melbourne until 2000X. So we're not quite sure when 2000X is, but we'd like to congratulate Bernie for his efforts. And you can see from the captions that Bernie is a specialist in volcanic contributions, riverine, plain landscapes, and is also doing a lot with not restoration, but sort of looking after these landscapes, and is doing some work with UNESCO on Victorian plains, which one of the main big volcanic features of the world, the Victorian Western Plains. So, Bernie, thank you very much. Our next volunteer with a huge reputation is Jim Rowan, who's been a specialist in the Mallee. We've asked Jim to come up, and Jim has been initiated with a lot of land studies, one of the early workers with the Soil Conservation Authority. As you can see from the imagery, a lot to do with the Mallee in terms of various dune systems, and contribute to the Victorian Geomorphological Framework. Congratulations, Jim. And Jim has been responsible for providing a lot of the basis for the statewide land systems, which again is a hierarchical approach for the whole of the state. So again, a very big context sort of item. Thanks very much, Jim. And next, the character under the hat is Mr. John Martin. We asked Mr. John Martin to come up. John is an agricultural scientist with experience in Northern Territory in Victoria, focusing on the Wimmera, with a very chemistry bent. So again, you can see the range of people that are contributing to this holistic view of Victoria. Congratulations, John. Just before John goes, John's still doing some work in the Wimmera and keeps threatening to bring out a lot of data on soils in the Wimmera. So it's a mine of information, so anybody wants to know anything, see John afterwards. Thanks very much, John. Next we have Mr. John Nielsen, and if I can ask John to make his way up. John was with the Geological Survey of Victoria and specialises in geomorphology and engineering geology. And this is very interesting because he's one of our few specialists that has something to do with urban issues such as the tunnel rain. So, do you want to just accept that, John? Thank you very much. And John is, as I say, specialised. You can see with the Mount has been a specialist for us in looking at eastern Victoria and the uplands, as well as, and you can see that he's worked on a few very key projects around Melbourne. So, if you're digging tunnels anywhere, this is the man to talk to. So, thank you very much, John. This smiling chap here is Mr. Ken Rowe, and we asked, my apologies, Dr. Ken Rowe, which will become obvious in a minute. We asked Ken to come up. Instrumental again, and Ken's background is forestry, so again another background for us, and dealing in land capability. Congratulations, Ken. See that Ken is a specialist in northeast Victoria, and not only did Ken sort of lead a whole lot of groups, including ARI, and has an ecological bent, but he also is gives us all hoping that he did a PhD after he retired, and has also been a research fellow at La Trobe Uni. I just like it just thinking about it. So thank you very much, Ken. Now this is the elusive Dr. Rosengren. Unfortunately, Neville's not able to be here, even though he's often based in Bendigo. case, I'm going to ask Nathan Robinson, who's worked with Dr. Rosengrant, to accept on his behalf. Nathan. You will notice that there is a difference in facial hair between the two, so don't get them confused. And we'll congratulate them. Thanks very much, Nathan. Next we have, just to show some people we really do get hands-on, we've got Dr. Ian Sargent, and Dr. Ian Sargent also unfortunately can't be here. I don't know why, but for some reason he thought he had to take his wife on a cruise to the Mediterranean and couldn't be here. Why he would not be here for that instead of that, I don't know. But Dr. Sargent is a very interesting character in the sense that he's concentrated in eastern Victorian Plains, particularly Gippsland Terraces, but he's been an academic, he's worked in the state government, he's been a teacher, so a lot of experience, and particularly also up in northern Victoria, the northern riverine plains, where he's done a huge number of holes, a bit like John Martin there. So to accept on Ian's behalf, I ask Mr. Mark Imhoff to accept on his behalf, please. Mark, we'll say more Mark later, but he's been our publicity person. Thank you very much. Now, the next person on the list who also unfortunately couldn't be here is Mr. Peter Dalhouse, who's an academic at the University of Ballarat as well as a consultant, and he's busy trying to wrap up his PhD at the moment. He's also had an engineering geology sort of background similar to John Nielsen. In fact, I think worked with John at one time at the Geological Survey. So again, we're getting this range of expertise. So we've gone from ecology, agricultural science, back to sort of solid geology again, which has given a lot of experience to the group. Now, I'm going to ask if Mr. Richard McEwan is here to accept this on behalf of his former colleague. So thanks very much. I looked in the box and there's very few left in the box. So we've got more people than what the certificate, so I'm not quite sure who's left. So we'll just run through and we've sort of given people that have been, from the department's point of view, just put up something here. So Mark Imhoff will be speaking later about the Victorian Resources Online, and I get a brownie point for every time I mention Victorian Resources Online. So I've mentioned it a few times, don't worry too much. So Mark's methodologist and soil surveyor and has been instrumental in getting a lot of this information out for people to look at, and one of the things we're hoping to do with this project is to have it out in VRO, have it out so people can have a look. We're starting with a map, there'll be more information coming, and we're still looking forward to a little bit of help from our senior people. So just, I think, congratulate Mark and thank him for his efforts. Richard McEwan, who, I don't know whether you recognise the man there and the man in the suit that just came up, they were the same person. And Richard has been instrumental in pushing this group in a bit of publicity, and we thank him for that. Richard has specialised in the Western Plains, having been a former lecturer at the University of Ballarat, so again provides more expertise to our little group, and sort of, it's a relative newcomer to our group. He's only been with us 7 years as against the 12 years of everyone else. He's been fantastic. So thank you very much, Richard. Nathan Robinson, who has also sort of been up, and he's been instrumental in doing the mapping, putting the mapping together, the GIS sort of work, and he's one of the people who could actually talk to a lot of the technical people us. So we sort of thank Nathan for all his work in there. Not Nathan has a geological background, but very adept at the mapping side of things. So thank you very much, Nathan. Then there's this dodgy character, I don't know if you put this in, there's this dodgy character at the end here who's done various things, and for some reason he's going to get a certificate, I don't know why, but so I'll say thank you for him, and then I'll come back, okay? Thank you for indulging with us a bit there. We'll just sort of move on. There's a whole lot of acknowledgements because this all started a long time ago to review the land systems of Victoria, which is descriptions of land at approximately 1 to 2,000 to 2,500, 250,000 scale. And there's a whole range of people there that have had different sort of inputs, including Marie down there, who's up the back there. So thank you, Marie, for some stuff together. So there's a lot of work here, but I think there's a lot of cooperation that can sort of continue. So for that, and that's what the third tier map looks like. Given the different colour codes, and there's a, if you want some information, if you want to send somebody, there's a URL there, soils.info. And I'd just like to conclude by thanking the Minister for being so patient and being with us up here. Thank you for your support.
Hello everybody. I'd just like to now welcome Mr. Richard McEwan onto the stage for a presentation. Richard is a senior research scientist with the Department of Primary Industries and is also the project leader for the Our Rural Landscape project, New Dimensions for Agricultural Landscapes, which has initiated this conference. So, welcome Richard.
Thank you, Gemma, and thank you, Minister. This is quite, thank you, you guys. You rock on the rocks. This is quite extraordinary. We are actually ahead of time, and we hope this is a sign of things to come, that we can really get everything in that we want to and leave good time for people networking and discussing it. A lot of this is really down to the efficiency of Gemma Heemscoat, who was, you can have committees to do things, and people will have their meeting and they will be told what they have to do, and then you'll have another meeting and everybody reports on how they didn't quite get round to it. But Gemma has been sterling in terms of really keeping on top of the job and keeping on top of people and thinking it through. Excellent organisation. So, I'm really quite nervous this morning, and I spent a lot of time worrying, researching topics for talks I have to give, and they are short talks we give to each other. You can script them fairly thoroughly, and that gives you some insurance that you know is there. You can rehearse them in time and get it all down pat. But unless you have some sort of skill in terms of making that really fresh and interesting, it isn't interesting. And it's not a conversation. And so you're all, way back up the back of the hall there, and I can't see your eyes or anything. It is time for a conversation. And I've been given this opportunity not to report on some particular new technology or technique or the results and how wonderful it was, but to talk on this very big subject of knowledge focused down to another big subject of natural resource management. And so, who am I to do this? Well, any of us can. We all know things, we all have ideas about what these things are. But just a little bit about where I came from to this point. In the 60s, Rachel Spring wrote a book, which you will know, Silent Spring. And I got that as a school prize. It wasn't academically brilliant. I got that one. It was actually the art prize for a three-dimensional sculpture poem about life. So it tells you I'm not quite on the same track as a lot of my colleagues. I'm with them in what they do, but I'm not as good as them as what they do. But I feel I try to contribute in a more maybe general way. I would say higher because it implies something better. But it's just a different perspective. We'll have our perspectives on the world. We're trying to understand it, do the job better. And we develop tools and say, oh, well, triple bottom line, we think that covers it. The dimensions we can map into those three areas. So I went off to Edinburgh University and did a degree in ecology. And at that time, there was no other university in the whole of Western Europe that offered such a thing. Not that I was looking beyond the UK, but it was a unique opportunity. It was a fresh opportunity. And I went there bright-eyed and full of hope to be instructed in how to really save the world that Rachel and others were saying greatly threatened by what we were doing. And it was the biggest intellectual disappointment of my life. And I actually got thrown out of university after my second year and worked for the Forestry Commission, toiling on the moors and in the frost and snow, and thought, this isn't really what I want to do. I want to make a contribution. And so I studied in that year out, and I learned during that period how to study. And during that period I explored all kinds of material. And up to a reading list that came with the units. But what the hell does this mean? Why are things such a mess? That led me to leaving university and squatting a mansion, a derelict mansion in the Scottish borders, where I helped build it up and managed the estate for some 15 years, but also studied esoteric literature, meaning of life sort of literature. And then came to Australia prior to that, doing postgraduate work in soils, and particularly pedology and land evaluation, because I'd had a visit to Australia and I didn't understand what I saw. I'd been trained in soils in Scotland and I didn't understand the Australian landscape, and I wanted to make a contribution. I've been here 19 years now, and half of that time's been in academia and half of that time's been in government research. And I'm really grateful to the DPI and the investment in the rural landscape for giving me the opportunity to pursue in the last 4 years with a team of really capable and interesting people a challenge to try and put things together, to try and bridge some of these gaps in really knowledge and natural resource management. So, knowledge for natural resource management. And I will start with some definitions. My definitions. Natural. What's natural? Well, it's here before we were. We didn't build it. We're a product of it. We're actually dependent totally on it. Resources. Well, they're resources because we find them useful. We want to do stuff with them, make our lives better. And management. We plan. That will be the real management. Planning when, where, and how much of those resources we use, how much occurs. And then what do we do with those resources? We fabricate things out of them. We re-engineer the environment, we re-engineer the ecology. The English landscape, which people love so much and protect, is a totally re-engineered landscape. And we consume those resources, and more everybody's being made aware of these issues. Oil, for instance. So place and purpose, where we are today, is about that identification of use of a resource, where it is, and how we use it. So spatial models, particularly for natural resource management and planning, that's what we'll hear about today. And there's a great program and some really good presentations you'll see and follow. Knowledge. Knowledge. What am I doing that? if this goes on. I don't know how many of you have heard of DICWIT. DICWIT is what DIKW becomes when IT get hold of it. It's a structure for considering, information knowledge management. It's very topical. So it's just a quick sort of perspective on what it is. So data are just bits. Data, color, for instance, a simple data point. There are some people who are absolutely exceptional in capturing and regurgitating data. They call these people idiot savant. They have no capacity to make relationships or meaning out of that data, but they have tremendous, some of them have very photographic memory, some have very musical memory. They can just put that out, but they don't know what it means. So data doesn't really have relation, doesn't have meaning unless we give it so. So there's the two axes here, one in connectedness, so between bits of data, we connect them, and then understanding that we put into that. So the next point, we talk about information. Information is about understanding the relationships. And knowledge, when these relationships start to build into patterns and we can see systems. That isn't enough. About knowledge for natural resource management. Having that knowledge is not enough because there are decisions that have to be made. And that is wisdom. Understanding the principles and being able to pick the option. Often with insufficient data, you don't know the future. None of us know the future. So it's easy to have wisdom in hindsight. It's very hard to have wisdom in front of the problem. We are very much about understanding landscapes. And everybody has their view of landscape. Michael Lernig has this view of Mr. Curley in the landscape with his direction-finding duck, all of which has symbolism for us. The geomorphology, the uplands, and the GPS system there, or walking in front of Mr. Curley, strolling over the uplands. But we want to understand these landscapes, so what is that about? Well, we had an interesting workshop yesterday and a brief discussion on the meaning of landscape. So I won't argue that one. So land generally, landscape, the attributes of land, the soil, the vegetation, the rivers, the soil and water, and then the climate that interacts with that. I'll put that up here, it'll be a lot easier. There's my presentation. Okay. And they interact. Land use opportunities, which we can look at in terms of zoning. We saw the geomorphological framework, put that in an agricultural, ecological sense, understanding how those different areas of landscape offer those opportunities, and the natural values that go with that. And we might call these ecosystem services in a lot of what we derive from those values. The Our Oral Landscape project had a number of themes. One, and it was a big picture. What are the questions? Who's asking them? What do they need to know? How well can we actually do the job now? What have we got in terms of models, methods, and data? Better review that. And can we do it better? And one thing we thought, we could do it better if we had a framework to integrate all of this. We set out with these big missions. So we actually had a wonderful symposium in 2004, and there were many people who have come again today. Thank you for coming back. Came to that symposium when we said, we're going to kick off, and in 3-4 years' time we're going to have all the answers.
Some hyper-intelligent, pan-dimensional beings got so fed up with the constant bickering about the meaning of life that they commissioned 2 of their brightest and best to design and build a stupendous supercomputer to calculate the answer to life, the universe, and everything.
Oh, Deep Thought, we want you to tell us the answer.
The answer to what?
The answer to life, the universe, everything. We'd really like an answer. Something simple.
Have to think about that. Return to this place in exactly 7.5 million years.
Is it finished? I don't know. They go back.
What, 7.5 million years later?
That's right. They do.
Deep thought. Do you have
An
an
answer for you? Yes, but you're not going to like it.
Doesn't matter, we must know it.
All right. The answer to the ultimate question of life, the universe, and everything is 42. Yes, I thought it over quite thoroughly. It is, it's 42. It would have been simpler, of course, to have known what the actual question was.
But it was the question. The ultimate question. Of everything.
That's not a question. Only when you know the question will you know what the answer means.
Give us the ultimate question then.
I can't, but there is one who can. A computer that will calculate the ultimate question. A computer of such infinite complexity that life itself will form part of its operational matrix. And you yourselves shall take on new, more primitive forms and go down into the computer to navigate its 10 million year program. I shall design this computer for you, and it shall be called...
So, there's an analogue here, wonderful analogue from Douglas Adams. And it's probably interesting to note, actually, some of the imagery from this film. When you start to pull clips out of things, you see the detail you never see when you go to the movies. And that if you look at the landscape in Magrathea, when the computer was first designed and asked the question, there's trees everywhere and there's actually very few people. But at the time of the answer, 7.6 million years later, we're only 3 or 4 years later, so you can't expect such a profound answer as 42 from us. But the landscapes have been extensively cleared, and the bureaucracy has grown tremendously. There's a red carpet for the beings, and there's a lot more guards, and they're in very fancy uniforms. There's a nice analogue here, and the lessons in that little vignette, but the lessons to all of us. We could all come up with these statements. And I feel in many ways what I'm saying is quite obvious to you, but maybe it's an obviousness. It's obvious we need to do something about it. So one obvious thing is research does take time. In this particular case, 7.6 million years was fairly excessive. But the point is, there's always a lag between the question and the answer. There's questions being asked now, which there may be answers generated for 6 months' time, 60 years' time. And the political urgency of that question will have gone. The urgency of the questions will have changed. And this is something we really need to be able to deal with in terms of providing solutions to landscape questions, solution to resource management questions. And another little lesson here, 42 was obviously a very distressing answer for everybody to receive, but I wonder how many of you have been on either end of that story, in terms of presenting the results of your research or an answer, and it's just not what was really asked for, or it appears so by the purchaser. There's a frustration on both sides. There's a frustration on the side of the scientists trying to do these analyses, produce the results that are valid, that are supported by good science. And there's a frustration on the part of decision makers and policy. They want a clear option, they really want to know. And there's a tension there. There will always be that tension. But the other lesson there is the research needs to be driven by very clear questions. And anybody who's done a PhD will understand that very well. They've been able to do smoothly and complete it smoothly, where all of their methods, their results led to answering a question that was clearly framed with clear methodology to achieve that. But often we do things that are fairly open-ended. This project that I've led has had very open-ended questions. They're almost equivalent to life, the universe, and everything. But the answer does need to be simple. No good giving an answer that then is going to take somebody else as long as it's taken you to discover it, plus as long as it's taken you to learn the tools and techniques and science of discovery that's enabled you to do that work. Yet we are all in that position as specialists who have come to a certain point in our knowledge and trying to unravel it and make it simple and make it relevant to people who do not have the time to listen to detail that we would love to give them and give them that understanding. We have a big gap there. So it must be too simple. 42 is too simple. And the other rule here is usually the answer generates a new question. And answering the next question is usually more costly than the first. And so Deep Thought had designed this supercomputer that was going to have a 10 million year program, and the beings were actually going to be part of it, an experiment within it, and was going to be even slower progress towards the answer. And this process doesn't usually end. The general trend, if you look at our science, we are discovering so much. Whether it's adding to wisdom and ability to make decisions and apply knowledge in that respect is very questionable. The trend is just towards greater complexity in our understanding and greater complexity in models. And that's unfortunate, because if the greater complexity can't be then brought back to some sort of principles and rules that can be applied outside of the modelling regime, we are locked into a future where increasingly we'll be forced into trying to make decisions and analyses through computative techniques with models and numerical models and process models, hungry for data, hungry for process relationships that we may never actually get to the bottom of. And why do we need to do that? Is it because we don't have enough trust in the kind of decisions that managers can make or that we can make? Or is it that actually there's so bloody many of us on the planet that the resources are so critical in terms of their volume, timing and availability, we are really under threat unless we get things so tightly engineered. So I would speak against that kind of process, because all it will encourage is more pressure, more population, tighter use of resources. So knowledge for NRM comes back to some very major planetary decisions about what we do as a population. We're seeing those pictures in the big picture in climate change, the big picture in oil prices, but they'd be addressed in exactly the same way. How do we maintain current growth? Grumpy old man. Can we make it any simpler? We thought, yes, at least if you could have some frameworks with simple and obvious logic. Because a numeric model may not always be necessary. Decisions are always made with incomplete knowledge, always have been. And there's a lot what we call soft knowledge. So the opinions, the expert judgments need to be brought together with the hard data. Now, I'm not speaking against science at all. I am a scientist, but I think a lot of the knowledge we apply can be unbalanced if we rely totally on hard science. And the model can be complex, and they are complex, but the output can be simple. I think some of the efforts done by people in terms of visualization to represent what's happening in the landscape and in terms of the model predictions is really an excellent bit of progress. How do we ensure that we've accounted for all aspects of the issue? And what can we learn from past work? Back in the 60s, this book, Designed with Nature, and anybody who doesn't know this book and works in this field, I exhort you to read it. And anybody who did read it at the time or since it's come out would carry it pretty close to their heart in terms of meanings it conveys and the processes that it advocates. It was an ecological perspective in which values were mapped, values, all sorts of natural and land values, but a basic civ approach, but done prior to computing and prior to the GIS systems, but it was a foundation for that. And then more recently, and we had a workshop, David Mott and Scott Bassiter are here, and they're giving a talk, a keynote later on this morning, with 6 levels, where they've defined the levels of models and questions that are appropriate to making decision in terms of landscape design and landscape research. We've used that framework to say, well, what are the right questions? What data, information and knowledge are needed, and where are the gaps? We did a little bit of an audit around our own scientists who work in this landscape area to see who fitted in where, and to work out as a capacity in an organisation, how can we do things, not a specific landscape scenario, Simon. As they're saying, this whole spectrum of work. Well, we've never done that before. We've done projects where things have been, they've happened and the skills have been brought in, but we've never stood back and say, what is it actually we're doing in a systematic way? And the logic of this is so simple. We really welcomed it. In terms of combining soft and hard knowledge, we can do that, and we can actually rate risk to landscape without any process modelling. But landscape attributes mapped and rated according to their susceptibility to threats. The management, the land use that's happening on those, and the practices relating to those pockets of land, interacting with those susceptible units of land, giving you a likelihood of whether you're going to have a problem or not, and a rating is good enough for this. Then if you really value that asset that's going to be impacted and is very sensitive or not so sensitive, it gives you an idea of what the consequences are of that event happening, that likely or unlikely event. And that all comes down to risk. With simple visualization and support for decision makers. And there's a workshop here during this conference on this model. And if you want to know more about that, then I would exhort you to find the time in your program to go and attend that. One of the big questions is, how do we actually integrate what we do? We can put multidisciplinary teams together, and we'll have a team meeting and say, this is what we're trying to achieve. And then everybody goes off and they do their bit in their specialist kind of way, often with something in their head that might not be quite what the others conceived. There are real language issues here in terms of the type of science people bring. We can put all those disciplines into a project, we can do the analyses, but how do we really achieve integration? There was some recent research just reported there by Tress et al. 2007 in Land Use Policy, where they surveyed 235 research groups across the globe. And these are the conclusions. They come, this is an interesting paper. A lot of it, again, is the obvious thing. Yeah, we don't spend enough time discussing these things. But an integration plan, what is an integration plan? I've never seen one. I've been involved in integrated projects. I've even led projects that could be called integrated, but I'm not sure that I've ever understood this imperative or how it might look. Is there something we need to do that's quite different to what we do as specialists, to take ourselves out of the project time to do this? So what's the aim of the integration, and how will you realise it in the output? It's just like another project. One of the things they came up with from all the feedback was actually quite contrary to what we're all believing at the moment, which is plan smaller rather than larger projects. And the reason for this is the transaction time in terms of understanding what each other do, and allowing that time to develop the language. And having, yes, we love meetings, but these meetings are important because they're engaging people from different disciplines who need to become familiar with each other and what they do, gain their trust, and develop a common understanding to reach a common solution. We all start out with a common problem, all make a contribution, and the solution is usually a mixed bag. And here's another one, and it's a real lesson for me. I'm probably a major culprit in DBI. Plan realistic outputs that can be delivered on time. This is so critical. Avoid setting expectations too high. And then this rider, because we do this in order to please funding agencies and stakeholders. This is a universal driver on our research around the planet.
So it wasn't destroyed?
Actually, it was. This is a backup. Earth Mark II.
So you made the Earth?
Not me alone, but I did my part. Ever heard of a place? I think it's called Norway. That was one of mine. I got an award for it. All right, Frank. That's Frank. Aha. They've nearly finished the oceans.
Wouldn't it be nice? But in many ways, we're trying to do that. We're re-engineering the ecology and trying to understand how to do that. That, of course, was the very advanced computer that was being replaced. The Vogons having destroyed the original Earth that Deep Thought had created to make way for a transgalactic highway, and the notice had been posted some remote galaxy somewhere, so nobody knew about it, which is another nice analogue about planning. So I can conclude now. And the major conclusion that we should all keep in mind is there is no backup. We've got one go at it. We've got one go to get this right. We can all do our little bits, but let's do the little bits in the big mission, as big missionaries perhaps, because the work that you all do is really important. And we talk about environmental restoration, but reconstruction is not always an option. We have some excellent ecologists here at this conference, and there's a little mini symposia going on within it, looking at some of these aspects, the time lag to actually restore an ecological landscape, and the possibilities. The obvious again, yes, lots of domains that we need to be able to talk to each other. That knowledge sharing is essential. It's not easy, and we don't put enough effort into it. And back to this issue again, the general trend in science still emphasise that. Simple answers are wanted, faster and at lower cost. I watch drivel on TV for roughage. I do two things for my roughage and sanity. I play the banjo and watch rubbish on TV. And there's a show called 24, which is absolutely dreadful. But Bill Buchanan, one day after he was there as the head of CTU, the counter-terrorist unit, comes in and there's some disaster happened. Somebody's escaped from somewhere or other, and he comes in and says, "People, we must be better at what we do, and we have to do it faster." I think that's a great sort of motto for a project leader to have, and it's certainly one the managers seem to have. But at the end of it all, we do our research, we do our models, we do our outputs. These answers must lead to solutions. The solutions are going to